WNST, Taos, and playoff baseball and knockout games. We have some real football coming back to Baltimore, and of course, didn't look like real football 2 weeks ago against the Steelers, but things changed out in the East Bay this weekend, certainly for the hopes of Ravens fans. This guy has been stuck watching the Chicago Bears, as we were on Monday night, getting a preview of this week and next week's game, as the Ravens will travel off to the Twin Cities next week to take on the Vikings. But this week, it's all Bears all the time, just like the real life of Jeff Dickerson at ESPN NFL Nation in Chicago, Illinois. You can follow him at Dickerson ESPN, as well as through the Worldwide Leader. Dude, you're watching some really bad football out there. I mean, I sat around and watched that on Monday night and said, man, they had an extra day to prepare. It didn't look like a Thursday night game until the penalties started, rookie quarterback, injuries. I mean, all of the above. This is a rough sledding right now for the Bears organization.
Well, it's been a rough, 4 or 5 years. I mean, I used to cover teams that would win when Lovie Smith was the head coach, and then Mark Trestman took over in 2013, and that lasted 2 really forgettable years.
Yeah, we had a little Trestman experiment here, as you might remember as well.
Yeah, and I knew right away. I said, boy, I think one Harbaugh is doing another Harbaugh a disservice by recommending him to be the OC for the Ravens, and that didn't last too long. And John Fox is 10-27 here in Chicago. So, yeah, it's not just this year, Nestor. It's been really downhill for this organization for quite some time. But I will say this on Monday night. At least you got a little bit of Mitchell Trubisky in your life. It's not a finished product yet. The numbers were awful, actually, against the Vikings. But he definitely gives you a little something different at the position in Chicago than the Bears have had in quite some time. So I don't know what he's going to do against the Ravens on Sunday, but definitely there was some juice Monday night at Soldier Field. Probably the best atmosphere in that stadium I've seen, again, maybe 3 or 4 years. It's been that long, and since fans have been that excited about at least one player on the Bears.
And everybody was drunk in the parking lot watching the Cubs beat the Nationals, which I applauded on Monday night as well. So that'll go some extra. You know, the thing with Trubisky, it's interesting. At the end of the game, you're like, he didn't play all that well or whatever. I didn't think he stunk, like watching the game and throwing the fatal flaw and throwing the pick at the end and kept them in the game. And they're not a very good team to begin with. I thought the individual things he did, moving around the pocket, making some plays, turning plays that maybe, quite frankly, Mike Glennon, first and 10 would have turned into second and 10 or worse, second and 16. I saw him roll out, make some plays, and somehow turn it into second and 1 a couple of times. So, I didn't think it was all bad out of the gate for him. The only question I had, and look, I watched a little bit of the Steelers game a couple weeks ago because that's sort of the business I'm in, and certainly the Bears looked better in that game than they did, and the Steelers have looked awful against almost everybody except us here in Baltimore last week. But, I looked at it and said, well, why wasn't Trubisky playing the whole time? I mean, and especially if you know you're going to be bad from the beginning. I don't think there was a whole lot of, thought that this team was going to win 10 games with Mike Glennon under center, right?
Well, that's right. Now, they didn't think Glennon was going to be that bad, Nestor. I mean, 8 turnovers in 4 weeks. And he's a game manager. It's not like he's some gunslinger out there that's taking all these chances. He's a game manager that couldn't protect the football. I believe the coaching staff was ready to make the move after week 2 when the Bears got blown out in Tampa because, again, Glennon coughed it up, 4 times. I think there was some resistance from the front office. I think the GM, Ryan Pace, has been ultra-sensitive about Trubisky. It was Pace's idea for this guy to sit the entire year. Now, that's not realistic. I mean, he's a second overall pick. He's going to play at some point. But Pace is very stubborn. So I think it took another just god-awful effort by Glennon on that Thursday night against Green Bay to convince them that, all right, we got to do this. We got to try to win some of these games here, and Glennon's given us no shot. So I think if it was up to the coaches, it would have been a little earlier, but this is definitely much sooner than the Bears GM originally envisioned here.
Well, that's why you give Glennon $18.5 million, right? And there was a real overshot on him, his ability, his track record, and whether he could be a 16-week quarterback there, even despite being pressed by, the favorite son, is obviously everybody, 70,000 people showed on Monday night, even amidst a loss.
Yeah, that was a bad miss. That's all Ryan Pace too. I mean, again, he has been enamored with Glennon since Glennon was at NC State. I don't know why, but he was, and Pace used to be in the personnel department at New Orleans. So he wanted this guy. Look, it won't matter if Trubisky turns out to be the real deal. I mean, that's a contract you can just wipe away. Glennon will be gone probably after this season. He'll do whatever he's got to do. He's got some money in his pocket, and good for him. But Pace can recover from that if Trubisky turns out to be the quarterback here for the next 6 to 8 years. If for whatever reason this doesn't work out, there's no surviving it for Ryan Pace. He won't be around. So, yeah, I mean, he has got as much tied into Trubisky as anyone. It might be too late for Fox, Nestor. I mean, it might be gone here because 10-27, they're going to have a lot of miraculous finishes here for him to save his job, I think, in 2018. But Pace can hang on as long as Trubisky continues to develop and grow. And I'm with you. I mean, I walked out of there Monday night feeling like, look, at least there's some hope. Like, he did things at quarterback that Glennon could not do. He runs very well. He's mobile. He's got accuracy, although he was not very accurate, surprisingly, really, Monday night. He can be much better in that area. That was his real calling card at North Carolina. But there was enough foundation there where you're like, all right, I can see it. I see what the Bears envision here with this guy. Now they just have to get better pieces around him for that to really work, but sadly that won't happen until next year at the earliest. So now it's about just continuing every week, a couple of good plays here or there, and don't get hurt. The most important thing now is after they've made the change, he has to start the next 11 weeks and not get hurt, because anything like that would be a major setback for him going into next season.
He is Jeff Dickerson. He covers all things Bears in Chicago, which means he's going to be cold and probably lonely in playoff season here this year. He's Dickerson ESPN out on Twitter, as well as at ESPN.com, and the worldwide leader in everywhere they travel. Tens of thousands follow him for Bears info. You can as well at Dickerson ESPN. Let's get on to the rest of the team, man. We hear so much Trubisky. I guess the best player on the team is the defensive end at this point, Akeem Nicks. I mean, they're pretty obviously, and a little bit of a travel guy. I saw Leonard Floyd getting off the edge. Our boy Pernell McPhee, who we had here for several years, he got himself a ring here. I like him very much. He's been out there, but some knee problems. But, this was supposed to be the strength of the team, right? The front seven defensively was supposed to eliminate the run and get the ball back for Glenn and Trubisky, whoever it was going to be, right?
And I think that the defense has done fairly well. They've had a lot of injuries, though, Nestor, and that's the problem. You mentioned Purnell. He's the half a guy used to be in Baltimore because his knees have been chronically bad. He played actually more snaps on Monday than I bet the Bears wanted him to. He played about 65% of the snaps, which for him is very high coming off all these knee problems. But, they've lost Willie Young, who's one of their pass rushers. He goes on injured reserve. Quentin Demps, their starting safety, he's on injured reserve. They had Jarrell Freeman, starting inside linebacker. He's on IR. Danny Trevathan was suspended for that Minnesota game, but he'll be back Sunday against the Ravens, so that helps. But yeah, Akeem Hicks just got paid. He's playing well. And then Leonard Floyd, I thought that was a real breakout game for him. Granted, in the first half, Sam Bradford looked like you and I out there playing quarterback. He was so immobile. I think I could have gotten a sack. But Floyd had 3. He had the hat trick and the safety against Minnesota. So I think with the Bears defense, they're good enough, Nestor, to keep you in games unless your offense is turning the ball over. And that's been the problem because even on Monday night, Trubisky has 2 turnovers, the one crucial one in the fourth quarter, and they can't overcome it. But yeah, I think defensively you'll see Sunday. It's a pretty good defense. They hit hard. They are a little undermanned. But Vic Fangio is an excellent defensive coordinator, gets them in the right spots, and I think they'll definitely at least keep it competitive against the Ravens because that defense is pretty stout.
Sometimes I swear we have a former coach on every single staff in the league. I mean, you say Vic Fangio, yep, he was here for a little while. Trestman, yep, he was here for a little while. Just go through all of these names. In the case of John Fox, he's a guy that was never here and worked with a bunch of guys like Jack Del Rio that I knew pretty well, over the course of time and years. And, he's leaving Denver, and then they go win a championship, comes to Chicago. Looked like a good opportunity if they could get some players. But, again, on Monday night, I don't know whether to shoot at John Fox or not, or shoot at the personnel people that have been there, through the course of, 2 different administrations now. They don't look like they have a lot of talent. I don't see them and say, boy, I wish I had that guy outside of the defensive end, quite frankly. I mean, I know there's some, if you could lend us Cohen the rest of the year, we could run around and put him in that Danny Woodhead role and it'd probably help our offense a little bit, but it's going to be interesting to see whether he and Howard are going to be helpful to Trubisky in this offense.
You don't get this bad, Nestor, for this long. It's a collective effort. It's not one guy. It is everybody. It's ownership. It's the people that are still at the top of the pyramid with the Bears that have kept their jobs year after year.
Yeah, we're familiar with that. We play the Browns every year.
Yeah, exactly. You know how it is. I mean, it takes a lot of work to be this bad.
It does.
The Bears have been in last place in the NFC North for like 20 weeks. I mean, I think even more than that, consecutive weeks. It's really bad. Look, Fox had a lot of success in Denver with Peyton Manning. He comes to Chicago. It's much different. They made a lot of mistakes in the draft. They made a lot of mistakes in free agency. There have been some hits. You mentioned Tariq Cohen, Jordan Howard. It's a pretty good backfield for the Bears. Eddie Goldman's a nice nose tackle out of Florida State, former second-round pick. But there have been so many high-profile misses. So, I don't know if it's too late in the game for Fox to be back next year unless they really show a lot of improvement. They win some games, they're competitive, and you really feel like the arrow is pointing up. Unless that happens, it's hard to justify bringing everybody back. But, I don't think Fox is a terrible coach. It's just everything he's tried here in Chicago, it just hasn't worked, and they can't keep anybody healthy. And that's a big problem, too, because he overhauled the whole sports science system here with the Bears. And the people he has put in place, it has just, there have been more freak injuries in Chicago at non-contact walk-through practices or in the weight room, or, when guys should never get hurt. This is what's happening, and, injuries have been a major reason why they just can't be as competitive as they really should be. On paper, going into the season, the Bears are like, maybe a 6-win team, maybe a 7-win team, but at this rate, with guys going down left and right, no matter how good Trubisky is, Nestor, probably a 4 or 5-win team. If they're lucky. That's really how bad it's been right now with attrition, just how worn down they are because of all these injuries.
Jeff Dickerson joining us here from ESPN. You can follow him at ESPN, or Dickerson ESPN, I should say, out on Twitter. It's funny you'd say that about the injuries because, around these parts, when we think about playing without Yonda, playing without Brandon Williams, playing without Brent Urban, amongst many, many others that went down in the offseason from Dennis Pitta and Tavon Young, straight on through, this is an epidemic everywhere, right? We're going to see Minnesota a week and a half from now with no Bradford, Case Keenum running around, maybe Bridgewater at some point later on in the year. You got, obviously, the Houston Texans now with the J.J. Watt injury. Odell Beckham's gone. This is throughout the league, and it feels like even some other teams like the Patriots being down this year, you can only be that good for so long, and then things start to happen, and there starts to be another Kansas City or a Philadelphia that's going to win some games this year instead of you.
I think the difference is in Chicago, Nestor, is that they don't have the backups that can go in there and play. That's the problem. It's the overall talent level on the roster. That's why teams that suffer these injuries, a lot of them are able to overcome it. But you're right. God, what a horrible last weekend it was for the NFL with all these star players going down, from Beckham to J.J. Watt to Whitney Merciless to even our former guy in Chicago, Brandon Marshall, who had surgery, and his season is done. Yeah, it's not a unique thing here in Chicago, but I will say the manner in which the injuries are suffered, I feel, are unique. I haven't done a spreadsheet on teams that suffer the most season-ending injuries in non-contact practices. I haven't done that, but I bet if I did, and I pitched it to ESPN, the Bears would be probably near the top. Because I have just seen the freakiest things with them getting hurt. It doesn't make sense how they can have all these torn muscles and ligaments in non-contact walk-through practices, but here we go. That's just been the Bears' reality under Fox.
Jeff, life comes at you fast, right? The Ravens had all these injuries. They go to London and get skunked. They come home, get their ass kicked by Pittsburgh, who somehow lost to the Bears a couple weeks ago, and you witnessed that, and I saw some pieces of that. And then, you say the Ravens, well, last week we're going to Oakland. I know Carr wasn't in there, but you started to feel like maybe they're just not going to have enough bodies. And to your point, you can only plug and play so many, street free agents and, seventh-round draft picks and putting those guys in instead of Marshall Yonda. And think that you're going to get anywhere. And then I see this ray of light, which was Monday Night Football, which was I saw the Vikings play. I saw the Bears play. We have them the next 2 weeks. 3 weeks from now, we get your boy Jay Cutler coming in here on short rest with the Miami Dolphins. The next 3 weeks become winnable games for a Ravens team that we sat around here for 2 weeks swallowing hard thinking, wow, maybe we're one of those bad teams that's had too many injuries. And it feels like life anew at 3-2 when you go out to Oakland and you beat a backup quarterback and you get a pick and the quarterback looks like he's moving around a little better and you run the ball a little bit. Boy, the Ravens smell better here this weekend on my birthday weekend. That like the next 3 games here, they have a chance to be 6-2 legitimately, and that's not just fantasy talk on the radio. When you're playing the likes of Case Keenum and a second-time starter in Trubisky, and then Jay Cutler on short rest, I'll take our chances the next couple of weeks. Doesn't feel like there's any big bad wolf in this league, not even the Chiefs.
I would agree, and who knows how the Dolphins are going to be after this whole coach controversy with the offensive line coach. I mean, that's terrible. I've never seen. Although, sadly, I would wonder if that's way more common in the NFL than we know about it because of the lifestyle and the stress and the pressure and everything. But that being said, yeah, I hope Cutler's still the guy by the time the Ravens play him. I know it's not going well for Jay down in Miami. Gase is a big supporter of Jay, and I covered Gase here in Chicago for a year. I think he's a great offensive mind. But, Cutler was retired for a reason, Nestor. He was kind of drifting off into that broadcasting sunset for a reason.
Yeah, what do you have to say about all the Cutler thing? I mean, from the naked butt to the I'm going to be a broadcaster to, oh my God, Tannehill's hurt, let me have a job. It was funky to me. And, all my Dolphins beat writer buddies, and I have those guys on, and several of them I know from working on they were all like, oh, he's like a changed man, he's fine, he's good, dude. I can't imagine he could have gone into broadcast. I never saw that life for him ever, but I also didn't see him coming back and trying to like run around with the Dolphins to go 7-9 or whatever it's going to be at the end of this, right?
He was better later in his career with the media. I got Jay in 2009, and it was a terror. I mean, it was an off-the-rails train wreck for him with the media. It got better. He is a pretty smart guy. He is well-spoken. My thing with Jay was always like, I'm like, Jay, you got to let people in. Like, you can't be so private and so secluded. But I actually think he would have been okay. But coming back to Miami, because it's always like when a guy steps away and retires, it's really hard to get him back in the same way he was before. It's like when you make up your mind that you're done with the game and the game is done with you, it's very difficult to just flip that switch. Now, some have done it, but I never thought Jay would necessarily fall into that category. So I'm not terribly surprised that they're having some struggles down there.
By the way, I watched Marshawn Lynch play last week, so yeah, I'm familiar with that too, right?
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I mean, when you're done, you're done, but sometimes guys want to come back. So I think the Dolphins is a winnable game for the Ravens, no doubt. And the Vikings, they look so much better with Case Keenum on Monday night. I will say this, Nestor, if Keenum starts that game instead of Bradford, it's not 2017. It's a much more comfortable Vikings victory. So I think that of the three might be the toughest game for the Ravens because Minnesota does have a very good defense with very experienced players and Mike Zimmer there on the sideline. But yeah, I agree with you. I do think that it's shaping up pretty well for the Ravens. We'll see what the Bears can do on Sunday. Sometimes teams like the Bears will win a game they're not supposed to win and lose a game they're not supposed to lose. So you never know, but so much of it will be Trubisky and what kind of corrections he makes. But he's on the short week, which makes that even more difficult for a guy going through this for the first time.
I saw Jacksonville beat up on Pittsburgh Sunday. I watch all the games because I never know what the hell is going to happen. I don't know how anybody bets on this stuff. Make a case for me, Jeff, for them winning. Make the Bears. How do they win in Baltimore on Sunday? What has to happen?
Well, a couple things. First of all, defensively, they do a great job against the Ravens, which could happen. The problem the Bears have, though, is they don't take the ball away on defense, and that's their big undoing defensively. If they force more turnovers, they'd make life so much easier for the offense, give them a short field. But the Bears' offense rarely has a short field to work on. Monday night was a little bit of a difference just because the special teams did a good job for Chicago. So if the defense hunkers down and they get good special teams play and Trubisky is better and doesn't turn it over and they run fairly well with Howard and Cohn, and then Trubisky can make those 2 or 3 big plays down the field moving outside the pocket, maybe the Bears have a chance. Now, I personally wouldn't pick the Bears to win this game. I won't pick the Bears. I'll be there Sunday in Baltimore. But it's a crazy league. and things happen all the time. And I really do think that Trubisky's got some juice. It's just a matter of how the Bears can find a way to get the best out of him and put him in the best positions to win. And I'm curious to see what kind of game plan they'll have from him compared to his first start to his second start this Sunday.
Yeah, Case Keenum is a four-letter word around here, bro. A couple years ago, he came out of a tree and beat the Ravens. He was deer hunting earlier in the week. Texans called him, needed a quarterback, because the Texans always needed a quarterback, from Matt Schaub on, and beat our ass down there coming out of a tree. I mean, so I will never, ever take Case Keenum lightly, although his name sort of indicates that you should take him lightly. And so clearly the Bears took him a little lightly as well. Thoughts about the division, about Detroit, about Green Bay, about Minnesota, just in general, where that division is right now? I don't know that anybody should fear the Lions. I mean, I watched them play a little bit on Sunday. It didn't look so good to me.
Now, if Matthew Stafford's hurt, that's a big problem, and that's something you got to watch closely, the rest of the week here. I'm a big Stafford fan, though. I think that he is really settling into his own in his career. I think he's made a lot fewer bad mistakes. The arm angles aren't as goofy as they used to be when he was a younger quarterback. I think the Lions will be competitive. I think the Vikings, their offense will be their undoing. I mean, not having a running game. The quarterback play is pretty limited. I think actually how it is right now, Green Bay 1, Detroit 2, Minnesota 3, and Chicago 4, I think that's how it's going to be in Week 17. I'll never bet against Aaron Rodgers. You bet against Aaron Rodgers, you're going to lose your house. Because even when you think the chips are down for the Packers, he finds a way to come back and do it. So, I mean, the division title always goes through Green Bay. And I just don't think, Nestor, that's going to change until Aaron Rodgers retires. I think that's going to be their division and will still be their division for many, many years. You'll every now and again, you'll get an outlier, like Detroit will win a division or Minnesota. Or not the Bears, really, but those two teams. But, yeah, I think really Rodgers has a stranglehold on the North. I just don't see that changing anytime soon.
Hey, man, enjoy your trip in here. Make sure you don't eat any tourist crab cakes, and try to stay warm there this winter covering the Bears. I see turmoil and confusion on the back end of, I don't know, 3 or 4 wins, right? I mean, it's going to be ugly for a little longer than maybe just Sunday around here. We're just going to make sure we're not one of those 3 or 4, right?
You're right about that. Yeah, I appreciate it, Nestor. Yeah, it's always interesting with the Bears. I've had my Januaries free for a long, long time, and that will not be changing this year.
Well, it is nice in Florida and the Caribbean that time of the year, Jeff. So, and much nicer than it'll be in Minneapolis when we're at the Super Bowl in February. We'll see you around the corner. See you over the weekend, man. Thanks for coming on with us, Jeff.
Thanks, Nestor. Anytime, man. Take care.
You got it, brother. Jeff Dickerson of ESPN NFL Nation in Chicago, Illinois. He is Dickerson ESPN, and you can find him out on Twitter there. You can find me out in the Buy a Toyota Audio Vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device. Just download the TuneIn Radio app. We come in crystal clear from wherever you happen to be. Our morning newspaper is also awesome, and it ships to your email inbox at 7 a.m. each and every morning with all the headlines and the news and Luke's blogs and our videos and all that good stuff. It is all brought to you by Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com, where it's always $10 a month to get in the best shape of your life. Last but never least, our breaking news service is our best service. It is the WNST Tech Service. It's all brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. It comes whenever there is breaking news. There is never spam, guaranteed. And of course, Dennis Colatzos will be here on Thursday driving you home from 3 until 5. It is the SSV on WNST. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, streaming live on our Facebook as well as our YouTube WNSTV channel. I'm Nestor. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.